we have our own SMX World Championship coming up in September. We did announce the locations last weekend. We will return to ZMAX Dragway in Charlotte for the opener, and then we go to Texas Motor Speedway for the first time, and then we're finally back with a race in Las Vegas that I know the industry and the racers, everybody wants this real bad. And I think it's also going to help that the riders have some idea of what they're in for these playoff rounds. I remember seeing RJ Hampshire, to name one, at Charlotte, and he was totally surprised and caught off guard of what the playoff tracks were going to be like. So we'll see if they're a little more prepared this year. And I think now that they know, the riders are happy because they at least have an expectation. For example, let's hear Cooper Webb's thoughts once he found out where these races would take place.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked with the Charlotte playoff race. It'll be sweet. Had a lot of fun there last year, great turnout, so looking forward to that. And it was cool. All the venues seem really cool and excited for those.
Yeah, and I think Cooper Webb wants another shot at that. It was not an overwhelming performance last year in those playoffs, and he's riding much better, to be fair. So I think he wants another shot at it. And speaking of another shot at it, he almost had a wild ride this weekend. Still a great performance, second place on the night. But you look at that first lap, and this was oh so close to a disaster. Thankfully, everybody was okay. But you have to wonder, did this rattle Webb a little bit? You know, those early laps where Jett Lawrence is just scrambling to try to build a lead. Did that affect the overall race? Did that affect anything in Webb's performance? Was he trying to kind of regroup on that first lap instead of really trying to narrow down on Jett Lawrence's lead?
I was definitely worried, well, first of all, for the health and safety of the Monster Girl. She was okay, uninjured. But yes, I was worried that on the podium that Webb was going to say my whole goal was to stick to Jett Lawrence's rear fender, and that cost me. But he didn't use that. Either he doesn't believe it or he didn't want to use it as an excuse. Were you surprised that he didn't use that?
No, because he's a veteran and a professional, and I think he understood that he had an entire race after that. You know, they had gone, half a lap, and Jett Lawrence had a 4-second lead maximum throughout the entire event. So if he was going to catch him, and if he was going to close it down and beat Jett Lawrence, I think he understands that he had every opportunity to, and kudos to him for not making that an excuse.
So let's go to Tom Vialle here. Actually, it was my broadcast colleague, Ricky Carmichael, that said, this track still didn't have whoops, so it was more of a Supercross than Daytona, but he feels like the last piece is to do it on a track with real whoops. And I think you, not the whoops thing, but in general, are not 100% sold that like this is going to be a Vialle domination run from here on out. You're not sure there yet?
You know, I think he's definitely improved. There's no question about that. You look at the Arlington round where he got third on a true Supercross track. I think he will be in podium contention week in and week out. I just don't know if a very wet and difficult Daytona track followed up by a rain-influenced on Friday Birmingham track with no Supercross whoops is the exact barometer we want to use for how the rest of this championship will go.
I will say this, though. This 250 East has been in a search for consistency. He's the only, I guess you could say, championship-proven rider because he has 2 MX2 world titles. I know it's different because it's motocross, but to me that makes him a little more of a threat. But yeah, I don't know if we've seen the best from a lot of guys in that series so far. And speaking of that, we have not seen Haiden Deegan's best in a variety of ways. The results on the track, honestly, outside of the one win, no podiums, and just total chaos. And I know what everyone wants to talk about here, this first turn crash, which ignited a terrible night off the track for him as well. Okay, JT, as a racer, is this disrespectful? First, he throws Hammaker's bike down, then he goes to his pit and yells at him. He was fined $1,000 for this. What's your take as a racer with this behavior?
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways to look at this. And I think we have to go back to Detroit and think about that first turn crash that really Hammaker was the catalyst for, which set Deegan back in this championship. And I think, I don't know if there's hard feelings there, but I know that Deegan's looking at that crash going, Hammaker started this. This is why I'm down in points going into this round. He's runs into the wall and he looks up and he sees Hammaker's bike again in the first corner. So I think that triggered some emotion that maybe he should have handled betterly. I would say he definitely should have handled it better. But yes, going over, after the race, yelling and things, I don't think any of that's appropriate. Then you look at the event with Coty Schock. I know Coty Schock was frustrated that he felt like that Deegan had the pass made and he didn't need to initiate contact there. So it's really more, there's a multitude of events here where it doesn't seem like Haiden Deegan is handling the moment very well. You wonder if the pressure's getting to him. being the spotlight's getting to him, or is it simply him being a kid and a lot of things being thrown at him all at once? The big thing here will be, how does he handle it moving forward? Can he talk with his dad? Can he talk with his team and settle things down? Because he's 12 points down on a championship that he could win. He could get right back into this thing, but if he lets this continue on and build momentum in the wrong direction, he's certainly not going to win anything going into this Pro Motocross Championship and, of course, the SMX playoffs as well.
I want to make it clear, though, you said this, you don't think the pass on Schock by itself was egregious.
Well, I don't know why he necessarily felt a reason to go out and make hard contact, because I think he had the inside covered, and that was Coty Schock's point as well. It's like, I went too far outside. You had the inside. The pass was already made. Why did you feel it necessary to make contact on top of that? In the moment, it's racing, but yeah, unfortunately, Coty Schock got hurt, and I think that's why it made this so much worse, is that Coty Schock did suffer an injury.
Here's Schock's own thoughts on it from his social.
Daytona had put a hairline fracture in my collarbone, and it was healing. And then last night, the whole incident that I had in the main event solidified everything and fully broke the collarbone, and it's laying on top of each other now. So sucks, but I'm here in Southern California, and I'm looking to get surgery tomorrow and start the recovery process. So
that is a wild night for sure, from the very first lap to the very last lap of the night show. But if you want to know how to handle yourself, just break this down. You got to talk to Max Anstie in the most heartbreaking moment that a racer can have, and he was all class there.
Yeah, you could feel the emotion, and there were so many things that I think he wanted to say and express what he was feeling. But again, yes, I think he did the right thing. He gave so much credit to his team for working so hard, because no one can anticipate when something's going to fail in an engine. There's, thousands of moving parts, and motorcycles break. That's what happens if you race for long enough. He understands that. And I thought that he showed a lot of composure in the moment when it would have been very easy to not do that. So kudos to Max Anstie. I tried to get the point across, like, hey, this championship's not over. The results have been all over the place. Look at Haiden Deegan's night. Look at some of these other guys haven't had their best races. He didn't want to hear that at all in the moment, which I understand. But I do think we'll see him come back with a vengeance here very soon.
Speaking of emotion, you and I know the team owner for Max Squad, Yariv Konski, on a personal level. The guy is always emotional. The guy's always on the verge of tears. He's so into this sport. So somewhat predictably, he was pretty much in tears. He apologized for the bike failure that could cost his team a championship. Here's a quick snippet from his social media.
I feel like, we've let our fans and sponsors and Max down. My riders they're everything to me. They come first. And I just feel like I owe it to everyone to say something, because I don't want anyone to think it's any one of our mechanics, technicians, people involved in our program, because it's not. It was an OEM part that runs in our practice bike failed.
All right, that is tough. That's been the story we've been telling all year. 4 or 5 employees in a very low budget trying to beat the factory teams. And for the moment, it looks like they're now not going to be able to do that. On the bright side, for a smaller new team in the pits, about Triumph. Okay, they didn't get the podium out of Jalek Swallow. He's running third. He tipped over. But I was talking to Bobby Hewitt, who's the team principal over there. I don't think the result to me on paper even matters for this team. The point is, they just need to show that they know what they're doing and that they're capable and they have potential. And I feel like they're doing that.
Yeah, I think Jalek's ridden really well, but I've been more impressed by the motorcycle itself, to be honest. In this class, as competitive as it is, and you've watched the likes of Mitch Payton and these other teams chase that Yamaha that everybody knows has been so powerful, and then you watch a rider like Jalek Swoll come in and be competitive right away, grabbing hole shots, running up front. Doesn't seem like he's at any disadvantage whatsoever. If anything, they've been up front on the starts more times than not. So I think it's been a wildly impressive debut in a class that it's all about performance, and they've shown that they have that right out of the gate. So kudos to them. And speaking of another rider that's always great right out of the gate, Justin Cooper is really coming on here. And for me, that ride at Anaheim 2, the qualifying at Anaheim 2, where he showed he had the pace, that was the defining moment. And ever since then, he's been steadily improving and showing that he can battle with these guys. And I think this race in Birmingham was another step. He stayed in the top 5 the entire race. He battled back and forth with Chase Sexton, as you're seeing there. And he's really not giving these guys an inch. And to become one of the 450 elite, you have to week in and week out show them that you belong there. And I think he's well on his way.
I think he just needed to believe it himself. I've said this over and over. Justin Cooper has always been underrated. He's been good since the day he turned pro in the 250 class. He's battled for titles and podiums every single year and every single week. There should have been more hype. He shouldn't be considered like, oh, I can't believe he's doing good. This shouldn't be a surprise. The opposite is true with Ken Roczen, right? Like every time Roczen hits the racetrack, you expect that he could win. This is a guy that at 15 years old had the mark on him as a guy that could win races. I still feel like we're in that Roczen stage of the career where we're just not going to get it every week. I mean, he was fantastic at Birmingham. He looked so good passing Chase Sexton, as you can see, passing Cooper, pulling away from Eli Tomac, you name it. But I just don't know if we're going to see this all the time. But we are going to Indy. He was great there last year.
Yeah, and you just have to wonder what could have been. You think about that race in San Diego when he looked like he was on his way to run away with that win, crashes, and you're right, it's just the off weekends that are really killing him. The weekends where he's on, he can race with anybody, he can beat anybody. It's the weekends where he's not. You can't get a 10th or a 12th in this series, not past the halfway point. You can't have those off weekends anymore if you want to hang around in this championship. And unfortunately, you've seen him fall off the back of that championship chase because of that.
Anybody else? Anybody else in that category right now, JT? Any names come to mind?
Unfortunately, yes. Jumping to Eli Tomac, it's not going well, right? We saw signs of life. You look at Arlington, you look at Daytona, it looked like he was ready to fight for this thing. And I don't know how to paint the Birmingham main event as anything other than uninspired. You know, he didn't get the start, which, you know, after coming off that heat race, I'm like, here we go. Gets a bad start. I was waiting to see if he could fight forward. You could point to Justin Barcia and following him for 10 laps or whatever it was as the reason why he couldn't move forward. But I think this is critical. This pass by Jason Anderson late in the race, that is just not something we're expecting to see from Eli Tomac in a championship run year. And I just think it spoke to where he was mentally. He was probably really just taken aback by the bad start and all the things he had been doing to move forward. Felt like it really got undone in one main event in Alabama.
Yeah, I agree. The 2-2 finishes coming in. We still were giving him the mulligan a little bit at Daytona because he just didn't jump that quad. Maybe he was still fast enough to win races. The heat looked good. Yeah, I feel like getting stuck behind Barcia. He just let that affect his race too much. And now it's 26 points back for him. And that's for everybody because, as we said at the very top of this show, I think the field, not just the riders, but the other teams are starting to realize, man, even if we sort our stuff out, this kid is just legitimately good. He's going to be hard to beat, and now he's not making mistakes. I think it's, 13 points over Webb? That's not a lot of points, but I think it's more than just points. This isn't math, JT. This is the eye test. They see how well he's riding and how hard he's going to be to beat now.
Yeah, I think the prevailing argument was that he's going to make mistakes, he's going to leave the door open, and we will capitalize. Well, he's not doing that as of late, and if he figures that part of the game out where he can ride within his own limits and he doesn't have to push the envelope to win, I don't really know where they will find some sort of weakness in his game anymore. That's really been it. That's all they've had to hold on to because it's not pace, it's not starts, it's not, the racecraft side of it. I think they're running out of possibilities of how to dethrone this kid who is, let's face it, he is brand new to this 450 Supercross class, and he looks ready to take off with it already.
There's one small possibility. Look what we got coming up format-wise this weekend.
Yeah, Triple Crown to me is the best format we have to offer. Now, I know it's hard to sustain, and it's really difficult for the teams to pull off. I don't think we should forever abandon the 20 minutes plus a lap format, but this is a great way to change things up. You get 6 races of full action across the night between both classes versus just those main events where everything seems to come down to. So I love them. I think it really does add a different flavor to the series. And for guys who maybe had a bad weekend or things haven't been trending their way, they can look to this round and say, okay, this is where I'm going to get it back, right? The great starters can really find a way to capitalize on that and just use those 3 races to get a good overall result.
One more piece. Break down this Yamaha track map for us from our upcoming race at Indy.
Well, Indy has, soft dirt, right? We're in March. We've had some inclement weather, but it's a little bit different. You think about what Detroit looked like. I don't think it's going to be exactly that, but it will be rough and treacherous in the main events, and guys are just going to have to put in consistent laps. So I think these tracks are great. You get some hard pack, you get some soft dirt, and it truly makes it feel like a World Supercross Championship. You're getting everything thrown at you. So some people would say do ruts really change things? I say yes, they do, and for the good. I think it really tests the best riders in the world.
This means if Tom Vialle wins again this weekend, we're going to say, well, he did it at a muddy Daytona and a muddy Birmingham and a rutted Indy. I mean, the whoops might not hold up. So we'll continue to guess, probably even past this weekend's race.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes, right? If you're on one side of an argument, you'll always find evidence to support it.
So now we're off to Indianapolis. That'll be East Coast time. Watch Race Day Live starting at 1:30 Eastern and the racing at 7 o'clock Eastern on Saturday. You can watch on Peacock or outside the United States on the SMX Video Pass.
Hi folks, Lee Diffie from NBC Sports here. If you truly enjoyed what you just watched, you can get more news, interviews, and highlights by subscribing to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube page. You can get it all, so go for it.